Welcome to our broadcast tonight. This is Pastor Butterface, and it's so wonderful to be with you this evening. By the miracle of broadcasting, to be able to come into your living room and share with you the precious truths that have changed our own lives. We're going to look tonight, as we so often do, at the miracle of broadcasting. We often receive letters, and people ask us, what is it like to actually prepare the broadcast that we enjoy in our living rooms? And so tonight, I'm going to share some of the aspects of broadcasting. You may not be aware of it, but before we were even able to begin recording this evening, it was necessary to string miles of electrical cables. It was necessary to move lights all around the studio. It was necessary to choose the props that would be in the background. It looked so natural to you to see the rooster at my side. But before we used the rooster, we tried a stack of magazines. We tried a pillow. We tried a wicker pumpkin, and the rooster was chosen. It was necessary to stick with the rooster because we felt that it tied in with our theme. Church, it's time to wake up. The rooster is sounding the call. So we used this as our prop this evening. But when we do these broadcasts, there's much more preparation than stringing the lights and setting up the wiring, testing the sound levels. There's so much more that is involved because it's also necessary to come up with programming that addresses the needs of the listeners. After all, who would tune in if we talked about irrelevant topics? So we have to give special time and attention to choosing topics that are relevant to your life. And so often, we find these things in daily life. Just the other day, I went to a wedding reception. And at the wedding reception, we had already shaken hands with the bride and the groom. Oh, she was a lovely bride, and the young groom was blushing with pleasure as they had joined themselves in holy matrimony. But as we went through the line, my wife, Millie, noticed, has somebody spiked the punch? It appeared that somebody had spiked the punch, and this in a Christian wedding. I was shocked. I was grieved. I thought, surely nobody has spiked the punch at a Christian wedding. We found out, to our grief and our horror, that the punch had been spiked. Now, this is a commonplace occurrence. It happens in many weddings, I'm told. I was shocked to hear how often it does happen. What is a Christian to do when you're at a wedding where the punch is spiked? Well, we found the answer by a simple common sense. Drink the coffee. That's what we chose to do, and we've never regretted it, not for an instant. Sometimes you simply have to stand up and be counted. And we were counted with coffee cups in hand, drinking coffee while the others were getting drunk in riotous living and dissipation through the punch bowl. But we stuck with faithful coffee, coffee which never leads us astray, coffee which had not been spiked, and we've never regretted it. I'm so thankful to be married to a godly woman like Millie, who is willing to take a stand. So many wives drag their husbands down into moral compromise through things like drinking spiked punch. But Millie stands for old-fashioned gospel truths. In any event, many of you watched the broadcast when we talked about the wedding reception, and we received many letters from listeners and viewers who found that this challenged their faith and caused them to rise to higher heights. And so it is when we prepare our broadcasts that we go back to daily life and we say, what are the issues that our listeners are facing? Now, we received a letter from one of our viewers, and his question was this. Pastor Butterface, he wrote, and I'm quoting, he said, do you use cue cards? Now, some of our viewers may not know what cue cards are. With large sheets of poster board, sometimes on other broadcasts, there are actual performers who read the words they speak. And to you, the viewer, it looks perfectly natural. These, after all, are trained actors who know how to read cue cards and make it appear natural. but I do not use cue cards. Early on in my ministry, I realized that God was calling for sincerity. How can you be sincere while reading cue cards? It's important to speak right off the cuff, even if that means that there are little flaws, little bloopers if you will. And on the subject of bloopers, we have a collection of outtakes that our staff truly enjoys watching. There was the day I came in and I had a cold, and I was sniffling. I went through 2 boxes of Kleenex trying to record one broadcast. It took hours to get it all, and I kept sneezing. Oh, how I sneezed. But in spite of it all, we slogged through it, and eventually we had a broadcast. They had to edit out a lot. They had to cut out many scenes. But some of the staff have enjoyed watching some of those deleted scenes, and they take great pleasure in watching the mistakes that took place on that broadcast. Well, we find little ways here in the studio to amuse ourselves. You may not realize that it is hard work to prepare Christian broadcasting. It's hard work indeed. Frequently we work into the wee hours of the morning as we're getting the lighting correct, or we're adjusting sound levels, and sometimes we even encounter spiritual warfare as Satan rages as we attempt to spread the word of truth. And so we find that sometimes unexpected things take place. Warfare is a very peculiar topic. A watermelon truck broke down outside our studio not a month ago, and we were in here trying to focus on the truth we wanted to convey, and the watermelon truck broke down outside. Now, you wonder perhaps, how did we know about the watermelon truck? The driver rushed into the studio, and when he did, it turned out that he was carrying all of these watermelons, an entire dump truck full of watermelons. And in his consternation, the poor fellow pushed the wrong lever and dumped all those watermelons outside our studio. Meanwhile, our assistant, our receptionist, had just received an urgent telephone call. Her son at school needed his lunch delivered to him. She rushed outside just as the watermelon fell to the pavement, and she stepped in one and slipped, and she has finally been released from the hospital just this week. For 3 weeks, we had no receptionist in our office because of the warfare that we have stirred up by being willing to stand in the very vanguard of truth, making known to all and sundry the deep things of God. This is the kind of price we pay to be involved in Christian broadcasting. There's much more to broadcasting than meets the eye. Many times we have found that we are at the very point where dwindling resources cause us to wonder, can we go on? Can we take another step? More than once we have wondered how we would get through the week that lay ahead. But God has always abundantly provided, and it is through listeners like you that he has provided. Your generous donations have made it possible for us to move forward. And had it not been for the faithful service of folks like yourselves, we would not have been able to continue for these 23 years, bringing the rich truths of God to your home. But it doesn't stop there. It takes more than money. It takes hard work on the part of many unpaid volunteers. Our receptionist, whom I mentioned a moment ago, has worked without pay for 23 years. Her unstinting personal sacrifice has made it possible for us to maintain an office all this time. She is the one who files the forms with the IRS. She is the one who answers the telephone. If you have called our offices, you have heard her darling voice as she chirps like a little bird, speaking so sweetly to our people and making everyone feel that you are important to this ministry. And indeed you are important to this ministry. We are keenly aware that we don't just operate in a vacuum, but it is in fellowship with folks like you, good folks like you, that we are able to continue. But back to broadcasting itself. What is involved in producing a program? Well, first of all, we have to develop a theme that we are going to discuss. And sometimes we face unforeseen obstacles. For example, a little more than a year ago, we had a guest on our program and we conducted an interview. And he did something I was shocked to observe. He actually committed a grammatical atrocity. He meant to say he had gone to wherever it was he had gone, but instead he said he had went. Now this seems a very small issue to many people, but one of our viewers wrote to us a very threatening letter and said, I had finally gotten my son cured of using improper verb forms. He was about to have to repeat the 6th grade. And then he saw on your broadcast a man who said he had went. Now this was a grievous error, I'm sure you will agree. And we knew it was a grievous error, but at the time we did not focus on the grammar. We focused instead on the intent of our guest that was on the program. Little imagining that we would receive a letter from this woman's lawyer because her son was about to flunk English once again and be forced to repeat the 6th grade. When we received the letter from the lawyer, our first thought was, we hope we can settle out of court. So our little team gathered together and prayed. And I have to say, God was merciful. We did settle out of court. Many letters went back and forth between their lawyer and ours. And eventually, we were able, by paying a fine, to escape a nasty courtroom situation. But this is an example of the very sort of obstacles that we face. We must always be vigilant in our presentation of truth. One small error can have consequences that are beyond belief, and we seldom know what is going to come up next. This is one of the difficulties of broadcasting. People are little aware of how many things we must be aware of at all times. Our minds must be on grammar. Our minds must be on programming. Our minds must be on wiring. Our minds must be on sound levels. Our minds must be on lighting. Did I mention lighting? Our minds must be even on watermelon trucks out in the street. We came within an inch of losing our broadcasting license because of that episode. All because one of our guests said he had went when he should have said he had gone. Beloved, this is the sort of warfare that we face. And we hope that you will remember us not only with your giving, but also with your prayers. For without your prayers, we would be left in a morass of technical impossibilities. But we remind ourselves and we encourage ourselves with the scripture that says, with God, all things are possible. And that is the very verse. In fact, I have it on a plaque in my office. That is the verse that keeps us going. With God, all things are possible. That is how it goes, isn't it? Yes, with God, all things are possible. They really are. With God, all things are possible. It is your giving, your prayers, and our ceaseless vigilance in matters of grammar and lighting that we have been able to continue this broadcast, these many years. I would like to close with a simple anecdote that I think illustrates the very spirit of what we are all about, the very essence of what God has given us to do. We received a letter from one of our viewers. The letter stated, I have been watching your broadcast for almost 23 years. Apparently they'd missed the first few. But never mind that. They said, we have been watching your broadcast for almost 23 years. And I have been so touched by the sincerity and the depth of your appeal for finances. They said, your consistent appeals have moved me. And it has become a matter of utmost importance in my mind to begin sending support. So here is my dollar enclosed with this letter, and I will send another dollar as soon as I am able. Our hearts were moved. We were touched. Because it is just this sort of donations that keep us going. Without these donations, we could not continue this broadcast. And so when we receive letters like this, we know we are accomplishing what we have set out to do. Indeed, as the Scripture says, with God all things are possible. Oh, I see we have a few minutes more. How wonderful. This is another aspect of our broadcasting. We must always think, and I'm letting you in on a trade secret at this point, we must always think ahead. What will cause you to tune in next time we air our broadcast? Well, we like to leave a little something in your mind that will cause you to tune in again. And so we just have time to begin a message on the great eschatological truth about Gog and Magog, a message that I have prepared in the wee hours of the morning when I stay up late and study to prepare. The title of this message is Gog and Magog Will Leave You Agog. Oops, I see that we don't have time to go any further into this message at this time. So you, dear viewer, need to tune in again next week when we air this broadcast once again, and you can learn why Gog and Magog will leave you agog. Until then, this is Pastor Butterface, wishing you a blessed weekend and a glorious, glorious Sunday as you go to the church of your own choice. Blessings.
With its crystal tide forever flowing by the throne.
This program has been made possible by your faithful giving. Please continue to send your gifts, as they will enable Pastor Butterface to continue to proclaim to you those eschatological truths. Our address is IR4U, Watermelon Plaza, USA.
Oops, I see that we don't have time to go any further into this mess of this broadcasting. I'm losing it because of the peanut gallery over here. We'll just cut that part out. Punch at a Christian wedding. Can't do this. But yes, he said, I can't do this. Pastor Butterface, and unexpected things take place. I can't keep this up.
Yes, you can.
An entire dump truck full of watermelons. And in his consternation, what did he do? I'm sorry, I'm not good at this.
Keep going. I want to hear the last of that.
We want to know what he did.
In his... Our minds must be even on watermelon trucks. Just 23 years. How many? Oh dear. Sorry. There's a bit more that will have to be cut out in the outtake room. Anyways, Gog and Magog will leave you agog.